Good afternoon, and welcome to this May edition of Town Hall. I'm Marco Garcia.
And I'm Dave Woodland. Each first Wednesday of the month, we present Cambridge Mayor Andrew Bradshaw and a rotating slate of 2 of the 5 city commissioners to address issues important to us all.
And this month we have Commissioner Lejan Cephas and joining Mayor Bradshaw here in the spatially distant WHCP studios.
Marco, in just a moment, we'll get right to their introductory remarks. First, a reminder that your questions can be posed in the chat session. We will get to as many as possible. We have already received a number of topics in advance from the Cambridge Association of Neighborhoods, the Dorchester Chamber, and news teams at WHCP, the Dorchester Star, and Dorchester Banner.
Thanks, Dave, Mayor Bradshaw, and welcome back to today's Town Hall. There are many challenges and opportunities facing the city. What is at the forefront of your focus today?
Well, Marco, Dave, thanks for having us on again this month. Here to start the month of May. The city of Cambridge has faced a number of challenges over the course of April, starting with a fire and a shooting that we discussed in the April broadcast, and continuing on with some violence and other matters that have been, hurtful and have been kind of tearing apart portions of the community. But we are working on solutions with Cambridge Police for that, and with Rescue Fire Company. We continue to discuss and look into some of the housing issues that exist in the city of Cambridge. For example, we held a work session Monday night that was primarily regarding the housing task force that was established by the last mayor and council, but that really evolved and moved into the broader topics of housing in the city of Cambridge. We're going to have some legislation, some ordinances ready to move forward shortly on that. We did just recently hire one code enforcer for the city of Cambridge for the city building codes, and we are also going to fill a second position here shortly. So with regard to some of the housing issues, though, that's certainly not the end goal, having a code enforcer. It is a start, and we're happy to be moving toward filling these positions and getting the work back and completed. We're moving forward on some other matters. Cambridge Waterfront development continues to be a topic of discussion. We're discussing with the Waterfront Development Group the potential transfer of the port property to the development group. They also need to continue engaging with the University of Maryland Medical System regarding the hospital property. I will say, without going into too much detail, there are a couple developers that came forward to me and to the city that have interest in the project. So we're encouraging CWDI to continue engaging with them, to enter into deeper discussions with these groups, and do their due diligence and see if these may be the correct developers for that waterfront moving forward. Finally, we're heading into summer. So there's going to be lots of good events coming up in the city of Cambridge, lots of excitement. And we're just looking forward to the next few months of being in office here. So hand it over to Lejan.
Well, I would like to thank you, Marco, for giving us this platform to speak on city issues, and you as well, former Mayor Wooten. I'd like to thank you all so much for the platform that you provide, knowledge from the city to the constituents that live here in Cambridge. And I don't think there's really much I can add. The mayor pretty much hit everything on the head. But I would like to say that every issue or every point that he brought up, I am in 100% support, and I believe those are the priorities that we need to focus on here in the city.
Thank you, guys. So it looks like our first question up is 4 shootings this past weekend. What can you tell us?
Well, Sunday evening, I heard what I think was the first shooting. I was in my bathroom getting ready for bed, and my partner Natalie likes to watch the investigation discovery type shows where they discuss, unsolved mysteries and things of that nature. And as I was in the bathroom, I heard several pops, and I thought to myself, man, that's a wild show that she's listening to out there. and she said, "Honey, did you hear that?" And I said, "Yeah. What's going on that show?" She said, "No, that was outside." I said, "Oh." So I quickly, threw a shirt back on, called Chief Lewis, and went to see if I could identify kind of the direction it was coming from. To hear, you could hear some vehicles running. I called Chief Lewis, let him know that there were some shots somewhere on the west side of Cambridge, and loud enough to sound as though it was only a few blocks from my house. They identified the location. Subsequently, Rescue Fire Company, which I'm a member of, was placed on the call for medical assist, and a young man had been shot in the hip. My understanding is that all 4 shootings relate to that one incident, and they all involve the same individual or individuals. And it was essentially an ongoing or running event between these individuals. I will say it's my understanding that there are suspects identified. I can't speak to whether or not any are in custody at this point. I'm only doing that as the investigation continues. And I don't want to go into any further detail that could compromise the investigation, but suffice to say, Cambridge Police believes they know who is responsible and will be making arrests or have made arrests already.
Is it your understanding that there are gangs that are perpetrating violence because they're at odds with one another?
Do you want to take this one, Lujan, and then I'll follow up?
Yeah, I'll take this one. There's been gang activity going on within the city of Cambridge for years. I don't want to be specific because I'm not 100% sure what gang is versing what versing the other gangs. But I'm definitely certain that gangs is a part of everything that the city is experiencing at the moment. I think what we need to do as residents is if we know any information, we need to report it to the Cambridge Police Department because they are very diligently working towards trying to solve these shootings and they're actively working towards trying to prevent it in the future. Something that I know that they did over in that area where the 4 shootings happened. It's actually located behind an apartment community. It's on Cosby Avenue. There's 2 entrances going in there. You can enter through either Greenwood or you can enter through Cosby Avenue. And as I rode through that part of the city the other day, I noticed Sergeant Patton. He was out there. He was out there with Calvin. I believe he's a supervisor with the Department of Public Works, and I don't know if it's been executed as of yet, but what the plan is, the plan is to prevent a 2-way entrance. So it's a 1-way entrance. And that's essentially because they believe if it's a 1-way entrance, it's less likely anyone would try to come through in the near future or any time in the future, to try to do a drive-by or a walk-by or whatever type of shooting they did, because it's essentially going to be a 1-way in and 1-way out. I can say that area is also covered with cameras. There's all sorts of, video recording that's happening. So with everything that happened in that area, the police department, I'm certain they have recording on that information. And I'm pretty sure in the near future that we're going to have something in our newspaper disclosing who these parties were that decided that they wanted to terrorize this neighborhood.
And I'll build off of that. I've spoken to Chief Lewis and also to Superintendent Holden of Public Works regarding the barriers for that entry. And that is in process. It may be completed at the point. I know the hope was to get it done today. I'm not going to say that it's done at this point, only because I haven't ridden out there to take a look, but I know that the effort was to have the barriers in place by today. Going beyond that, I've also been speaking to some property owners or managers in that area about additional locations where cameras covering the public thoroughfares might be able to be installed. There have got to be some agreements reached on that, but I think there's a possibility that we can expand the level of coverage that we have in the area to learn who's perpetrating some of these things and to have good evidence when these cases go to court. And specifically, we're not trying to target any one neighborhood or area or the residents of those areas with these cameras. But when you have a concentration of violent crime happening in a specific radius of 2 or 3 blocks in 2 or 3 locations. It's unfortunate, but you have to provide surveillance in the areas where the crimes are occurring. And unfortunately, the Cosby Avenue area and the Greenwood Avenue area are parts of the city where there is a significant amount of gun and knife crime. To the actual question regarding gangs, having spoken to Bill Jones, the state's attorney, and having spoken to Chief Lewis of Cambridge Police, there is gang activity. A lot of the gang activity comes here from other locations and is related to the drug trade. There are local, I suppose in a broad sense you could call them gangs, but really they're more groups of young people who are together. But unfortunately, those groups of young people are being targeted by larger national organizations and trying to be co-opted in that regard. So that's something that we've got to continue to watch. It's one thing if it's a group of young people who at 20 or 23 happen to hang out all the time and call themselves something, and it's a different thing once they become part of a broader criminal enterprise, and that's what we have to avoid. Friendships and associations going from innocuous things into pathways into violent criminality.
And that's a good point that that the mayor made, that being in a gang, it's not illegal until there's actually illegal activity that's happening. So I know there are quite a few gangs in Cambridge where maybe they don't participate in illegal activity, but it's like a support group where they feed ideas off of one another. So I think it's really important that we understand the significance of a gang that's doing illegal activity, in a different gang or different type of gang that's actually trying to do something within the community.
Thank you guys so much. Our next question is, how can citizens help resolve the violence that is occurring?
Well, I'll speak on that. The way a citizen can help resolve the violence that's occurring is to stand up. And if they see anything, say something. Don't be afraid to call the police department. Call, the number to our local police department is 410-228-3333. And I believe there's a tip hotline. I think it's 228 drugs, if I'm correct. If I'm incorrect, someone please correct me on that. But there's multiple ways. The other ways that we can help resolve violence is be active in the community. A lot of times what happens with our youth is the inactivity or I guess a simple way of putting it, the lack of things to do. Illegal gang activity attracts those types of youth who have busy minds. They want to be creative. They want to do something, but there's nothing here for them to be a part of. So I think it's extremely important that those of us who have the ability, if we need to be a mentor, if we need to create a nonprofit, or if we need to join a community group to help be resourceful to our youth, I know that will help resolve some of the violence, as well as if you see anything, report it.
Yeah, and I think the last bit that the commission president said, if you see something reported, is really important. So I spoke a month ago regarding the matter that I intervened in on Cosby Avenue, where a person was unconscious on the ground and still being assaulted, and there was a crowd of 30 people, 40 people around them, and not a soul calling 911, not a soul intervening to help. And subsequent to that, I'm not going to speak to the incident, but I think it is important to remind people that when you see something, you have to say something. I was shown, as was the commission president, some footage of another violent crime that occurred in the city of Cambridge at some point in the last 6 months or year, where an individual was on the ground, a victim of violent crime, and people drove by in cars, and people rode by on bicycles, and people walking down the sidewalk crossed to the other side of the street and didn't call 911. And that individual laid there for more than 20 minutes before anyone called for help. 20 minutes. That's the difference between life and death for somebody. And, that's also the difference between a crime going solved and unsolved, because in that 20 minutes, that period of time provides a lot of time for an individual that's committed a crime to go ahead and dispose of evidence, to exit the area, to switch vehicles should they be traveling by car, any number of things that hamper and make an investigation more difficult. And there's absolutely no excuse, point blank, if you see a victim lying on the ground, or if you witness a violent crime, or if you see the victim of a violent crime suffering, to cross the street instead of rendering aid in some way, even if that renderance of aid is only dialing 3 numbers on your phone and saying, come to this address, and hanging up. Something, anything.
Neighbors be reporting apparent drug dealers in their vicinity, even if it's likely just marijuana and they're not bothering anyone?
Well, so, as time moves forward and marijuana prosecutions shift and change, and marijuana has looked more favorably upon, at least with regard to the danger that exists with it and things like that. I don't think that I would be one to call the police if I knew someone was smoking some pot. But the issue that exists is, with it still being outside of the structure of the medical marijuana system, with it still being something that's illegal to make a purchase of, the issue that exists is that even if your street level dealer is not taking part in any kind of violence, the organizations that are providing the product oftentimes are involved in some level of criminal organization or violence, and so at the level where it's someone that you see down the street, they're probably not a problem. But if you know the guy that's showing up from Philadelphia or Wilmington or Baltimore with packs, that's a problem, because they're probably involved in violent crime in those locations, and potentially in our city as well. So that it's ultimately a personal choice whether you find it to be a nuisance that requires police intervention, but it is still illegal to be a dealer. And so if we want to enforce the law to its fullest, and if you believe in that, then you need to make the report. If however you don't see it as being harmful to your community or impacting your neighbors, again, it's a choice, and I think it's a different kind of choice, because when you see violence in your community, or when you see others being harmed, that's a very different thing than this, in my mind. And maybe I'm speaking out of turn or incorrectly on that, but I just think that the circumstances differ a bit.
And I would agree with the mayor on that. I mean, you actually witnessing a violent crime is totally different from you witnessing a neighbor that you believe is selling marijuana out of his house. It's like it's one of those things where, how do you know? Just because there's a lot of traffic doesn't necessarily mean someone's selling drugs. I mean, who knows what it is? He could be selling biscuits. I'm not trying to make light of the situation, but traffic doesn't always equate drugs. Maybe he has a huge family. It could be anything. But I will say this. If it is a concern in your neighborhood, I'm not going to say not tell the police about it. That's what the anonymous hotline is for. And we have a very professional police department. They know what's valid and what's invalid, and what's worth moving forward with, and what isn't worth moving forward with. So I believe, I truly believe that's a personal decision, as the mayor stated. But as far as I'm concerned, I want to tackle the violence. Watching this individual just lay there and no one rendering aid, that's heartbreaking. That breaks my heart, and I don't have words. I just don't have words for that. So I see it as a difference, and I see it as a personal choice.
Thank you, guys. So the bird scooters are apparently coming to Cambridge. They just in time for the return of cruise ships and active summer season. Is the city in some sort of partnership to bring scooters to town?
So when Bird enters into a city, there is an MOU between Bird and the city with regard to their usability within the jurisdiction. But Bird actually engages with a private individual to act as a fleet manager. So interestingly, and a little bit of shout out, the first fleet manager for the city of Cambridge is also the producer for this show today, Mr. Julian Jackson. So he's working very hard on this. And so far, I think it's going well. We don't have the whole fleet out yet, but I've been seeing, I'll be honest with you, more use of these things than I kind of expected this quickly. I mean, I pass people on them all the time, and that's pretty cool. And so far, people seem to be respecting, for the most part, the fact that you need to put them back on the sidewalk or out of the thoroughfare. Not always, but if they get it right 9 times out of 10, we're moving the right direction. And as they become something that people are more used to seeing, I think they'll be used more properly more often. It's pretty exciting. I think we may be the first town on Maryland's Eastern Shore to have bird scooters. So if you're from out of Cambridge and you like taking a ride and exploring some neighborhoods and seeing some historic sites, come to Cambridge and come ride a bird. We do, as part of the engagement, have a very small fee paid to the city for each ride, but the majority of the profit goes to Bird and goes to the fleet manager. So it's a great thing for a young entrepreneur as well.
Okay, waiting for me to answer. I'm sorry. I thought we were going to the next question. I lost focus for a moment. Okay, as far as speaking on the bird scooters, the whole attempt with that is we want to make our city fun, and not only do we want to make our city fun, we want to make it more safe for pedestrians. So a bird scooter, it gets people out of cars, and it helps. It helps a lot of the motorists and as well as pedestrians understand that we actually do have a bike lane. And I guess the benefit of that, a financial benefit, it's not a huge benefit, but from my understanding, for every ride that's taken by Bird, 5 cents of that will be provided to the city. And that 5 cents is going to pool of money where we can use in the future to make safer pedestrian routes on our roads. But I'm extremely excited about it. Every time I ride by someone that's riding on one of the scooters, I feel like, wow, this vision is actually coming to life. So, and something else is these scooters, they're accessible throughout the whole city of Cambridge, even a little bit outside the city. I believe if I looked on the map, or even accessible through Algonquin. So I would encourage everyone to download the app. Hopefully very soon, once Bird gets their e-bikes figured out, for those who are not fan of scooters, hopefully we can have some bikes here sometime this year, for those who prefer to bike instead of scoot.
All right, great. Thank you. Multiple sources of federal and state funds are headed to Cambridge and Dorchester County. How far along is the city council in focusing on the priorities for the use of those funds?
So we're still in fairly early stages. I think we've identified some pretty key things that we want to do with the funds. One of the things is to make some capital purchases that were deferred in the past that are really important for the city, whether that be for the fire department or our public works department. Some of what we're considering is a growth or reallocation of some of the city services, and using the funds for that purpose. And then the commission president has identified, and I think this is correct, supporting some of our city nonprofits that are specifically targeting youth and low-income neighborhoods to try to use them to find solutions that maybe the city or that we aren't finding immediately. And finally, we're also identifying some infrastructure projects that may be necessary moving forward. The funds can be used for those things. There is potentially also a federal infrastructure bill coming down the pipeline as well. So certainly we don't want to allocate these funds only to find that we could have used others for those projects. But we're looking at some different things, and I will tell you that different states have different requirements with regard to dispersal of those funds. And over the weekend, I communicated with the city manager regarding the requirements that are in place for the city of Cambridge by the state of Maryland. And he has taken some of the steps that are going to be necessary to get those funds forwarded to the city. And that was through some communication I had with the Maryland Municipal League and some subsequent follow-up where there were some filings that had to be done with the state of Maryland before the funds could be released.
Well, I will say as far as those funds, we need to take our time. We need to spend them wisely. And just as the mayor stated, there could be other financial funds that could be available to the city. So I think the best thing for us to do, and I know what we're going to do, we're going to have many work sessions. It's going to be calculated. And, we want to put this, we want to use this as a stepping stone to move Cambridge forward. For one, so we can become more independent. And not only that, so we can have the ability to use these funds to invest in our citizens. So when they become adults or when they become, they can actually reinvest back into the city again. So that's the goal, is to be calculated and to take our time and plan.
And the good news with the funds, though half of it's being dispersed this year and half next year, they don't have to be used or returned until December of 2024. So it does give us time to review what's going on with other potential funding sources that are going to continue moving forward. And it gives us an opportunity to be very calculated and be very sure that we're making the right choices with these funds. One thing I've talked about repeatedly is using the funds for large equipment purchases for things like the fire department, public works, specifically because these have been efforts that have been ignored over the course of the last decade and a half at times. So it can provide a bit of a reset. And in providing that reset, because we're not going to be caught in a circle of financing these purchases, it gives us the opportunity to build new funds for capital replacement for these organizations so that we're not caught flat-footed 5 or 10 or 15 years down the road when there's replacement necessary. When you need to buy another bucket truck, we're not going, we need all the money now. We will have a fund in place that we can draw from. Likewise with the fire department, if in 25 years it's time for another ladder truck as we face right now, we're not going to be going, where can we find that $2 million? Because over the course of that 25 years, we would have been putting a bit of the money away each year, preparing for that purchase. So that wasn't done in the past. And having this kind of a reset does allow us to do that now so that we do always have money prepared to move forward with any purchases necessary and aren't caught in a bad position as a city.
And I guess to be more specific, because I want to get to the point, I hope we can get back to doing in-house recycling, in-house trash, because if I remember correctly, I think we're paying about $700,000 a year to Chesapeake Waste, and I believe everyone has a complaint about their service.
Well, I'll tell you, on trash days, that's usually my wake-up call as a citizen with an issue with not receiving pickup or pickup of one bag out of like 6 or something like that. So I do ask, and this is sort of a joke, when they come at 6:30 and don't get the trash, call me about it at like 9 or 9:30, not at 6:45.
Thank you, guys. What are the funding priorities that have widespread support?
I think we kind of hit on it. The direct needs that exist within the city for equipment, for nonprofit support, for organizational support, and ultimately, this does two things. It gives us the opportunity to start saving the funds for the future, but it also gives us the opportunity to reroute funds that may have been used for capital equipment purchases and move them instead to support city employees, to grow the city staff in areas where there needs to be growth, like code enforcement, where we probably need 3 enforcers, not 2, where we can see more equitable wage growth for city workers at public works. So even if the funds aren't used specifically for those purposes, it gives us the opportunity by moving some of those larger purchases, it gives us the opportunity to move those funds around and provide that longer term support for the employees as well. And I'll tell you, happier employees give you better city services, and better city services make it a better place to live for everybody.
And I know one topic I know we haven't brought up that the funds could be used on, but housing needs. Even if there's a housing trust fund that's created that the city is able to establish, from my understanding, some of those funds could be used for that. Where if there's someone that owns a home and if they're unable to make the necessary repairs, they can actually tap into that, and then as they pay the money back, it goes right back to the fund again. And that fund also can be used for like a first-time home buyers program. Let's say if someone needed money with, as far as like a down payment assistance for that first down payment. So that's an additional source or additional resource we could use as well.
All right, thank you. What funding proposals are not widely endorsed and could benefit from citizen input?
To this point, I don't think that we've had any that are not widely endorsed, because what I appreciate about this council is though we don't necessarily always agree, very collaborative group and willing to come to the table and have discussions and find agreement. And so even things that at first people might say, I don't know why we need that, what we're finding is with discussion, we're finding agreement. And so I don't know that we're seeing a whole lot of non-endorsement of ideas, and especially because we are going to be so thoughtful and I think very methodical in the decisions that are made with this funding. We're not to the point where there's been any heavy disagreement, because we're all looking forward to coming to the table at the work sessions and prioritizing and making these decisions.
All right, thank you.
I agree with everything the mayor just said.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. How do citizens make their views known in helping set the budget priorities for fiscal year 2022?
When the budget sessions happen, call in, be involved, listen. Even if you don't have a comment at the time, listen, take notes, and then in a day or 2 days or 3 days, you may have something that hits you. Send it to your commissioner. Send it to me as the mayor. Send it to city manager Patrick Komisky. We're all very accessible. I think that typically we all get back to people as quickly as we can, especially by email. For me, I'm not in the office at City Hall every day, but I check my voicemail 2, 3, 4 times a week. Try to get it answered for the most part, but always reach out. And if you reach out and you don't hear something quickly enough, reach out again, because we may have missed it in some way. But just always be willing and ready to reach out and let us know what's going on. We're easy to find by email, especially Ward 1 at choosecambridge.com, Ward 2 at choosecambridge.com, and so on, with it being the number, and then mayor at choosecambridge.com and P. Komisky at choosecambridge.com. Spelled like the ballpark in Chicago. So definitely keep reaching out. Let us know. I think that we're finding that what people see as priorities tend to be what we see as priorities, because we're residents too, and we're not really any different than any other resident. We have the same issues with trash. We have the same issues with occasional crime in our neighborhoods. We have the same issues with if a street closure happens, or if there's an issue with your water service. I mean, these things happen to all of us just the same as they do to every other citizen. So if you see something as a priority, it's something that we've probably experienced too.
And I would also like to cite an additional resource on the city website, choosecambridge.com. I believe there's a link where you can report a concern. And they have many different tabs that you can report it under. So, I mean, if you have a concern, you can report it on the website as well.
Absolutely. And thanks for pointing that out, LeJan, because I often forget that we do have a great reporting system on the city website, whether it be a concern for police that's non-emergency, or for code enforcement, or for the city manager, or for mayor and council. And we all do receive those to our email, and I respond here and there to them, depending on if it's routed to me or another city department. So.
Do you have any concerns about the proposed development with 2,000 homes being discussed for nearby TRAP? What impacts could be expected on Cambridge?
I think it's perfect timing because those homes that are being proposed in TRAP, I'm expecting them to come to Cambridge and spend some money. So
Yeah.
that's the goal. Once we get an effective plan with CWDI, and once that once the waterfront gets developed, I think that'd be a great place that I'm certain TRAP is literally just across the river. Why wouldn't they take out the time and travel 5 miles to see what's going on in Cambridge? So I'm excited because it's about time that we have the chance to turn the tables where we're attracting residents from other counties to come here to spend money with us and have a good time.
That's one aspect, and I think that the commission president is totally right about that. On full build out with 2,000 residences, 2,500 actually, 2,501 by the plan. That's 4.5 people per household on average, right? So now you're talking about 25, 5, 10. You're talking about 11,000 people, and so that's a whole lot of people. And I can tell you that it's going to really help Cambridge's viability as a commercial market. In ways that we've struggled for now. I've spoken to some people involved with some national retailers trying to explore possibilities. And what's often found is Cambridge's market is not quite big enough from a population perspective. It's not quite wealthy enough from a household income perspective. TRAP's location with a build out would make it a bit of a split market and would be to Easton's benefit and to Cambridge's, but from a commercial perspective. But Easton sees is a lot closer to full build out with regards to commercially zoned availability comparatively to Cambridge. So Cambridge has a lot more possibility for growth in that regard. The concern that exists is with that level of influx of housing, the impact that it can have on the housing market in the city of Cambridge. You put too much availability and then all the prices drop. And that's something that we've got to be concerned about. What I think is important to note is that the project has something like a 2-decade time horizon with regard to build out, being performed in phases, with the first phase only being something like being a phase 1A, being something like 90 homes. So it's not as though there's going to be 2,500 homes 5 miles from the city of Cambridge in 2023. This is something that's going to be a long-term evolving project for the rail companies over the course of 2.5 decades. And their expectations and their numbers are going to change over that time period as well. The other concern that we have to have, though, and that has been cited by Shore Rivers and the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, is the wastewater plan that exists for that project. And it's not necessarily a bad plan. I'm not an engineer, so I can't speak to whether it is a workable plan or not. But what I do know is that Cambridge's greatest resource is the Choptank River. And so our one concern in that regard has to be that any runoff or any activity doesn't have a detrimental impact on the Choptank River and then subsequently the city of Cambridge. So while I'm not taking sides in the lawsuit because I certainly don't have the knowledge, I am at least glad that there is discussion related to the wastewater plan so that we can ensure that it has a neutral impact on the city of Cambridge and on the Choptank River. And I expect, the rail companies and Chesapeake Bay Foundation and Shore Rivers to find, and Maryland Department of Environment to find that that the project's going to be one that's going to be handled properly and that's not going to have a detrimental impact on our river. So I think it's a project that has, there are some concerns, but there are a lot of benefits that will come with it as well. You have to balance them. And one of the things we have to do, knowing that it could impact property values because there will be an influx of homes, we've got to make sure that the city of Cambridge is a place that people want to be.
Yep.
Right. So if you're looking at them as competition in some way, which I don't think that it truly is, but if you are looking at the project in some way as a competitor, that just means that we've got to be on our A game with trash pickup, with police presence, and criminality, with our school system on the county level, with all these things, it makes us work harder to be better. And there's not a problem with that ever. I have always said, whether it be in business or the public sector, competition breeds excellence. And I look at that in this way.
And I totally agree with him, because I mean, that's, that's actually the perfect example. So as the mayor stated, if we're going to see that as a competition, that means we need to clean out our own backyards first. So, and that's the reason why that's why we take housing important. That's why we take code enforcement important. And that's the reason why we back our police departments. And that's because, the standard that we've been, that we've been encouraging to happen for this period of time, it's unacceptable. And it's time for us to want more for our city.
And just building off of that, and then we'll move on. But I think that desire and that understanding is what's led to the choices that were made by the people of the city of Cambridge. They see the importance of having people that are going to engage in these issues and work toward that. And that's why I've got the world's worst paying part-time job, that the 55 or 60 hour a week part-time job. But it's because we do care enough about it, and it does matter enough to us. And I know that the commission president and the other commissioners put in lots and lots of time trying to find solutions, because it means much more than simply being a job. This is our home, and this is our neighbors and our friends and our families, and we want this place to be the best place for them, for those that have children. We want it to be the place where they want to be and continue to be.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. Let's talk trash. Is there any discussion about bringing trash collection back as city administered activity? And does this topic dovetail with interest in having curbside recycling pickup offered?
I'll take this one first, because I've been enjoying this one lately.
Yes.
There is absolute interest in bringing back trash collection as a city administered activity. There's been no decision that we are going to bring back trash collection as a city administered activity. But what we are going to do, we're going to be exploring the contract with the current provider as it comes up for renewal in 2022. We're going to be reaching out to other potential providers, and we're going to weigh those options against the option of bringing the service back to the city of Cambridge. I will tell you that I've spoken with some manufacturers of waste pickup trucks, particularly automated trucks, and brought one to the city of Cambridge and said, hey, can your trucks operate in this environment, with these alleys, with these narrow streets, with these one ways? Is your equipment capable? Because if it's not, then it's a non-starter. And we're looking at this not because it's been decided we're doing this, but we've got to weigh the cost of the potential of bringing it back versus the cost of continuing to contract it. And you've got to know what options exist with regard to equipment and with regard to staffing needs for that equipment before you can make a decision about whether or not it's viable to bring it back. What we found is something like 80 or 85% of the city is able to be picked up with automated trucks. That means that you're staffing the truck with one individual, not three. That means you don't have guys on the back that are injuring themselves. That means you don't have as many workers' comps claims. That means that you can use a 130-gallon pickup tub versus a 95-gallon tub that we're using now, because the weight doesn't matter, because the equipment's picking it up, not a man. It provides a lot of opportunities. So that's one thing that we're looking at, but we're also going to continue to engage with other companies, because guess what? We may find that bringing it back in-house is roughly cost equal to working with Chesapeake Waste or another supplier, but we may find that the liability or other issues don't make it worthwhile for the city. But that's why we're looking at it now on a contract that's going to expire in June of 2022, because we want to be ready and we want to have the equipment in place should we have to bring it in, or we want to have the RFP ready should we put it back out for RFP. No matter what, we want to be more than prepared months and months ahead of time, so that we're not caught flat-footed and trying to scramble to make a decision in the 11th hour. And look, right now, especially, steel prices are high. Municipalities are all receiving this American Rescue Plan funding. So if we're going to be buying trucks, we've also got to be making a decision at some point in the next probably 4 months so that we can have them in place by the time it's time to go live, because it's going to be a fairly long time horizon to get any equipment if we do that. So that's why we're looking at it now. But we definitely have to explore the possibilities, because as it stands, the pickup that we're receiving is not adequate.
Yes, yes. And to jump on what the mayor is saying, we're definitely in the gathering of information stage as of right now. Chesapeake Waste is fully aware that the city is unhappy with the service. They're fully aware of it. So that's the reason why we're encouraging residents, if they have any complaints, to please go to the Choose Cambridge website. Please make a complaint if necessary, or you can reach out to your ward commissioner, because it's extremely important that, if this isn't working for us, it needs to be very well documented. We had I guess an open session. It was in March, and we discussed the services with Chesapeake Waste. We hope to have a work session soon with our Department of Public Works, because from my personal conversations that I've had, they don't understand why it was taken away from them. They actually took pride in handling the trash needs of the city. So we're definitely in the gathering of information stage, and just as the mayor stated, we don't want to be waiting at the last hour trying to figure out what are we going to do. So I know we're going to make a very informed decision, and we're going to consult with the residents as well as employees and what makes sense on paper.
One thing that is, and this is such like a nerd thing to talk about, but one of the manufacturers that I've spoken to builds a truck. So we know the automated trucks. Town of Easton uses automated trucks. It works very well in most neighborhoods, but you need some space, because the arm, and I'm, for those that are listening on radio, I'm doing some arm motions and things here for the people on YouTube and on Facebook. But most trucks have an arm that comes from the top, and it comes over and grabs the can and dumps it, right? One of the manufacturers that we spoke to has an arm that is against the side of the truck, kind of like this, and comes straight out, grabs, comes straight back, and then goes up and dumps. So in a city like Cambridge, it has narrow alleys, it has some narrow streets like West End Avenue, Chop Tank Avenue. This provides an opportunity to get the cans without a large amount of space being needed, without a lot of overhead clearance needed. It's exciting that kind of equipment exists, because it really does change the metric for the city with regard to what the costs are for the service, because you can reduce the number of people that you have. You can provide good jobs, good paying jobs, and you avoid injury for the individual. The worst injury that the guy operating the automated truck is going to get is maybe a leg cramp from pushing the gas pedal. So it's if that's the worst thing we've got to worry about, instead of back strains and shoulder injuries and things like that for individuals working the back of the truck, that's a good thing, because we don't want to be hurting our employees, and we want to be able to use our city employees in other ways, not as the guy on the back of the truck. We've got plenty of other needs in Cambridge that they can address.
Is there any further word on the cause of the tragic fire on High Street?
Not to my knowledge. I believe it's still being investigated. I'll follow up on that, because as a member of Rescue Fire Company, I would have expected to hear something had there been any further determination. So I'll reach back out to Chief Pritchett and try to learn more, because it was a multi-fatal fire. The investigations usually do run longer, because they want to be certain about what occurred. Whereas if it's $20,000 in property damage, of course they're still doing their due diligence on the investigation, but it's not quite the same situation.
Thank you. Now that the new council has been in office for over 100 days, what accomplishments do you feel good about, and which ones are proving to be more difficult to tackle than expected?
Wow. I don't know how to answer this question, because I wasn't counting days. So, but there's so many accomplishments. It could be someone sending me an email because their trash wasn't picked up. So, so I'll give a call to Superintendent Holden. To me, that's an accomplishment. So I think I guess the thing I'm most proud of, that, or something that I know we're going to continue, is the accessibility. Accessibility is everything, and not only just being accessible, as well as responding back in a timely manner. And not only that, making sure everyone understands that even if you don't live in my ward, how you feel still matters to me. So that's honestly the best way that I know to answer this. This is an ongoing process. I mean, I didn't have a 100-day goal. My goal essentially is to tackle every issue that comes up. I can tell you one of the most challenging issues is, whenever it's time for legislation, you have to essentially either depend on the city attorney or if you're able to reach out to MML to get some sort of, knowledge or some sort of direction. So that's definitely a challenge. But I just pretty much take every day as it comes, and I always try to make sure I'm prepared for the city commission meetings.
Yeah, and I think that the commission president's right. Gauging things by 100 days, I know it's popular. I know it's, I guess, somewhat easy to do, but issues evolve, issues change, new issues come up, other issues disappear. I like to think about what are the accomplishments going to be at the end of 4 years, and even at the end of 4 years, the accomplishments may not be apparent yet. I mean, let's look, for example, we've got Mayor Wooten as one of the hosts, and one of his great accomplishments is bringing the Hyatt here. And I don't know that people saw or understood the benefit of that until 15 years after the fact. It took until the mid 2010s to really have the community seeing what a jewel and what a benefit that was for the community. And that's one of his really, truly great accomplishments. But in 2000, were people looking at it that way? And that's why I think it's always tough to gauge things over a short time horizon like that.
Now that a new code enforcement person has been hired, where will her efforts be directed in the short term? I'd like to thank the mayor for what he said. She's going to have to come in and get acclimated to the job. I know she's already been out doing some work. Low-hanging fruit, right? And some of those things are smaller issues, and some of them are bigger issues. If you've got a significant amount of waste all around a property, and some of it's dangerous and it's sharp and it's rusty metal and kids are playing around it, that's something that's easy to see and easy to cite. And likewise, if you see a house that is occupied that has multiple of windows missing, low-hanging fruit, easy to hit and easy for someone that's learning on the job. Some of those other issues are going to be more difficult to learn, but ultimately she's going to go in and she's going to work hard. But again, low-hanging fruit, because you're learning on the job. You're not coming in with a huge amount of experience. You're not coming in with the courtroom experience that's going to have to occur. So hit the things that you can do easily, and then grow into the job. And that's what we're looking forward to with Miss Wyatt and with the next code enforcer that will be hired hopefully in the next week to 2 weeks. Hit the ground running, but hit the easy things and go from there. And that's what makes sense in this case.
Yeah, and I would agree with the mayor on that, low-hanging fruit. And also, in addition, if she has any ideas to make code enforcement better, if she has any ideas for possible legislation, we need some people on code enforcement who are thinkers. And based off what I've heard, she's definitely a thinker. So I'm hoping that's something she can contribute, as well as the low-hanging fruit, as far as making it, a better department, a better program, so we can make our city safer for our residents.
Mayor Bradshaw, have you spoken about the possible need for a livability standard in Cambridge? Has that idea received further work?
It has, and the commission president and I have discussed this a few times. Monday night during the work session that we had with the Housing Task Force, I was scribbling some pretty crazy notes. I guess they're readable. I don't know, but some of the notes I was scribbling were kind of a multifaceted approach to some of the housing issues that we have. But a minimum livability standard is one that we have to explore. There is a minimum livability standard that is set in place by the state of Maryland, but it can be expanded upon by local jurisdictions, by either counties or municipalities. Talbot County, Town of Easton, I believe Wycomico County have all issued expanded minimum livability standards, and I think especially in Talbot and in Easton, you see the outcome of that in that you have people living in safer homes than you have in Cambridge, and so that's something that we're continuing to explore. We do have to be very careful about the language that's set into place. Something that's been brought to my attention by some landlords, there's some concerns that they have, is that once a standard is in place, you'll have people run for office and then tweak the standard just because they can, and it will become more and more expansive and more difficult to maintain. But our goal, and the language will reflect it, our goal is going to be not about the quality of a piece of trim on the front porch or how pretty the wood floor is or anything like that. It's going to be about having people in safe homes with safe heat, with smoke detectors, with running water, with shelter from elements. I mean, the very basic things that we expect for people who are living in our city and that we would expect for ourselves and for our family.
And I would agree. It's about making it fair and making it safe.
Awesome.
Has there been any work done to bring recycling containers back to Leonard's Lane?
At this point, there hasn't, and for two reasons. One, the county has made it clear that if recycling comes back to Leonard's Lane, it will not be on behalf of the county. It will be a city contract. The county did expand the recycling center that exists on, I believe it's Chesapeake Drive that runs behind Walmart. And they have a facility there, and they've expanded the number of containers that are at that location. The commission president has identified the city property on Leonard's Lane as an area where we may want to explore better accessibility and options for residents in that part of the city, rather than having it turn into what it turned into previously, which was a real mess and a real negative situation for residents in that part of the city.
Yeah, absolutely. We do not want another landfill on Leonard's Lane. I can tell you a very dangerous situation from that Foxtel community and also those who live in Conifer Village. There are no sidewalks at all on Leonard's Lane. So at any given time, you can see the elderly in walkers and wheelchairs. You can see 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds just literally walking on Leonard's Lane. There's no sidewalks, and you have cars that are driving past them, obviously going well above 25 miles per hour. It seems as if maybe 30, 40 miles per hour. So essentially what we want to do with those city properties is we want to create a safe passageway for pedestrians. I've also identified some paper streets that actually connect to that property line that the city owns. So what the ultimate goal is, we want to create safe passageway for pedestrians where to get them away from streets and essentially take them on a path to the areas of the city that are desirable, such as Cornish Park that are currently in the process of developing. So I've met with Pat Escher. I've given her the vision, and she thinks it's fully possible that we should be able to have some sort of paved pedestrian path that gets them off the roads, gets them safe, and actually a quicker path to our parks. Oh, and one more thing too. I don't know if we're going to do it this year or maybe next year, but something else that we're discussing is we want to turn that into a community garden. We want to turn that into a beautiful piece of land, kind of like a safe haven. And also in light of the violence that's been going on in that part of town with the shootings and and the loss of life, I really think that's needed. There needs to be a place where people can go and cool off and actually enjoy nature.
Thank you guys so much. As we close today's broadcast, our gratitude to the Mayor and Commission President Cephas for providing this open forum to engage with the community via today's town hall. A reminder that this broadcast will be repeated this coming Sunday at 1 p.m. here on WHCP, and the video will be housed on Facebook and YouTube on WHCP Radio streaming channels. Thank you to the production team, as always, and special thanks to Technical Director Julian Jackson. I'm Marco Garcia.
And I'm Dave Wooten. Until our next town hall broadcast at high noon on Wednesday, July the 9th, go out and make your community a better place to live and support your local elected leadership.
Thank you all.
Thank you.